Welcome back, everyone. Quick Bricks NBA DFS podcast. As mentioned, you all know, my wife and I welcomed our new baby into the world over the weekend. Miss Emerson J made her appearance, so I am off the next 2 days of work. So got to dig in a little bit more for tonight's slate, 9-game slate that we have in the association. This is the 15th episode of the Quick Bricks NBA DFS pod. I continue to hope, glad that you guys keep coming back to listen and to see what I like. Really appreciate you guys. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. There's quite a bit that I like tonight, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking anymore. Let's start with Cleveland at Detroit. Detroit comes in as a 10.5 point home favorite here with a total of 211. This game seems like it could get out of hand rather quickly. If you remember, Griffin put up 48 in their last game against Cleveland. Drummond put up 55. But I don't think they had Stanley Johnson, which I think also is a pretty decent play tonight at the low end as a cheapie. But, of course, I like Blake Griffin. I like Drummond. Like I said, I think for a cheapie you can look at, a guy like Stan Johnson, or maybe even Langston Galloway at 3.8. He should get some run, obviously, if this thing does, happen to get out of hand, or he should just get run, period. He's had 20 more minutes in his last 5 games, so, they're still without, whatever his name is, the wing on the side, Luke. Can't remember his last name either way. They're without him still, so they're kind of limited on the wing, so Galloway's been getting some pretty decent run. For Cleveland, I really like Colin Sexton at 5.1. The guy's, 30 fantasy points or more in his last 3. He's getting plenty of run, since George Hill has been out. Clarkson he's playing, but Sexton's running right beside him most of the time, so Sexton's playing a lot. 5.1, I think that's very, very fair price on DK. Larry Nance at 5.7, I think that's definitely a very fair price for him. They're going to need it against Detroit and Drummond, and Griffin. Larry Nance at 5.7, 30.5, 28, and 36 in his last 3 games, fantasy points. So he's been putting up well. He's been exceeding his total quite nicely. Another cheapie you can look at is David Nwaba here at 3.5K. He's gotten 27 and 29 minutes in his last 2 games, put up 26.8 and 30. Yeah, 26.8 and 30 fantasy points in those 2 games. So Nwaba definitely very, very puntable in this game. Should get some run. It looks like they've been putting him in. C.D. Osman was hurt. He just got back. But that didn't do anything to his minutes. So Nwaba, most definitely be looking at him at 3.5. That's definitely a fair, very, very, very fair puntable price. And that's really all that I'm looking at in Cleveland, Detroit. And move right along to Utah at Indy. There's no line on this game. Obviously, it's probably because Oladipo was questionable tonight. He went out with his knee the other night. I would think that they would probably sit him again tonight. It would be kind of silly to play him tonight. Obviously, this isn't a conference matchup. This isn't, divisional conference anything. Utah's in the West, Indy's in the East. So for this, it just doesn't seem like it makes a whole lot of sense to play him after, they need to give him another night off, I would think. And if they do, I think that obviously you should definitely be looking at Donovan Mitchell at 7.3 for Utah. I think that's a cheap price for Donovan the way he's been heating up lately. Donovan's probably one of my favorite plays in the guard spot, especially if Oladipo doesn't play. I don't think a lot of people will look there. I mean, they might if Oladipo's ruled out, but on this slate that this big, there's a lot of good guards. So I think Donovan Mitchell at 7.3 is definitely worth looking at. Derek Favors at 4.6, 24 or more fantasy points in 3 of his last 4. He's been coming around. He's healthy again. Was injured there for a little bit. Wasn't doing much, but now he's back. They're definitely going to need him down low with Sabonis and Miles Turner and Thaddeus Young. So Favors, I think, is a nice play. He should get decent. He should get his usual run. If Oladipo does not play, obviously you can look at Corey Joseph at 3.9. You can look at Tyreek Evans at 4.1. Corey Joseph has played in 30 more minutes, 4 of his last 5 games, 24 fantasy points or more in 4 of those 5 as well. So Corey Joseph at 3.9 is definitely worth looking at, especially if Oladipo is out. he's worth looking at even if Oladipo plays. I think that'll make his ownership lower, and he hasn't had ownership lately, but he's been putting up serviceable numbers at 3.9K. So definitely be looking at Kojo there. I think you can definitely look at him. That's really all that I'm looking at in Utah and Indy. I don't really like Gobert. I don't really like Turner in retrospect. Sabonis is just not getting enough minutes for me, and this is not a great matchup for him as well. If he was getting 30 minutes in this matchup, we know Sabonis, we know what he can do, but like I said, he's playing Utah. It's not a good matchup. So, moving along, Phoenix at Philadelphia. Philly is minus 12, 223 on the total. Pretty high total. One of the higher totals on the board for tonight so far. Actually, for tonight at all in all. There's a lot to like. Obviously, Embiid is questionable. He's been dealing with that hand injury. Obviously, it didn't do much to him last game. He still put up 56 or 60 fantasy points, whatever he put up. We'll have to see kind of what he does. Obviously, if he does not play, Butler and Simmons both become a lot more attractive. Simmons at 8.9, Butler at 7.9. Obviously, more people are probably going to gravitate to Butler in that situation. Butler hit the big game winner last game. Everybody's probably going to be on Butler. Butler's going to be chalk. I think Simmons probably goes unlooked, and especially at almost 9K. But if Embiid sits, I will probably definitely be looking at Simmons. I think that's something you could probably look at for sure. If Embiid does happen to sit, you can obviously look at Amir at 3.1. He should get some pretty decent run. JJ Redick at 5.3 obviously I think becomes more attractive if Embiid sits as well. As we know, JJ has been playing over 30 minutes a game still with Butler, the acquisition of Butler, or the trade, whatever you want to call it. So that's kind of where I'll be looking. Butler, Simmons, Redick, Amir. That's basically the basis of what I'll be looking at. Obviously, for Phoenix, I think you can be looking at Devin Booker at 7.7. Not a big, huge favorite of playing him on the road here. However, I think Butler will more than likely be on Ariza, or they might throw Butler on Booker, and in that case, that would not be not very good. So I think you could look at other spots than Booker. DeAndre Ayton at 6.5. If there's no Embiid, I think Ayton becomes pretty nice play there. Amir is a bigger guy, but I think Ayton would definitely have the advantage over Amir. So if there's no Embiid, I would definitely be looking at DeAndre Ayton. I think TJ Warren at 6.4, over 35 fantasy points in his last 5 games. TJ Warren at 6.5, definitely be looking at him. That would be my other worry, is that Butler gets put on TJ. But TJ's been playing the 4, so I don't think that would happen. I think Booker's your best bet for Butler to get. That makes just so much more sense. Maybe Simmons gets thrown on TJ. I don't know. They put Simmons at the 5 the other day when Embiid sat out for a little bit. So the Philadelphia's been moving their rotation around quite a bit. Not really sure how that'll go, but either way, a higher total on that game, so you might want to get some exposure to it for sure. Moving along, Boston at Charlotte. Boston minus 2.5 here with a total of 217. I don't really like a whole bunch in this game. I think Kemba is way too overpriced at 9.9. I can't play him at that price. He's getting up there to where he's getting into AD pricing and getting into Giannis pricing, Embiid pricing, Simmons pricing. I don't think I can play that, especially against Boston. Kyrie, shut down Kyle Lowry here 2 nights ago whenever I was pretty high on Kyle Lowry. Kyrie was getting blasted for his defense, and he's been showing up. So not going to be playing Kemba at 9.9. I think you can play Jeremy Lamb at 5.1. I think that's a pretty decent play. For Boston, I think you can play Tatum at 6.0. In his last couple not in his last road game, but the 2 before that, he put up over 40 fantasy points. So Tatum I definitely will be looking at tonight. I think Jaylen Brown at 4.2, again, is puntable. He hasn't done much except for the night that he played Chicago that we were on him. But at 4.2, it's definitely a tournament dart. Aaron Baines at 3.3. He hasn't been getting much run lately. Hasn't been playing very many minutes, but he's very cheap. And if he gets to play 15 to 19 minutes, he could definitely exceed that value easily. So Aaron Baines at 3.3, if you want to throw that dart, fine with that. That's kind of where I'm at in Boston and Charlotte. And that will move us to probably one of my more favorite games on the board tonight, and that's the Clippers in Atlanta. I know Atlanta has let us down quite a bit lately, but for some reason I think Atlanta shows up for this game tonight. I think it has lots of nice fantasy appeal to it. So I think my favorite play in this is Gallinari at 6.2. Without Taurean Prince, they've been getting just literally bashed at the small forward spot. So I think Gallinari at 6.2 is probably one of my more favorite mid-tier plays on the whole board. Definitely be looking at Gallinari. Tobias Harris at 7.8 I think is relatively cheap as well. He's getting well over 30 minutes a game and putting up 40 on most nights. So at 7.8, I would definitely be looking at Tobias Harris. Do not hate Lou Williams. I would be making sure that Avery Bradley is not fully back. Lou is, with Gilgeous-Alexander playing a lot more lately, Lou's been kind of seeing 25 to 28 to 29 minutes. But if Avery Bradley does happen to make his return, that could shrink back to 20 to 22 like he was seeing beforehand. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. Obviously, like Gilgeous-Alexander again tonight, he's very fairly priced for this kind of matchup. For Atlanta, I think you can look at Jeremy Lin again at 4.2, 21, 25, 24 minutes in his last three, 22, 29, and 32 fantasy points in those games. Jeremy Lin is definitely worth punting again here. I really, really, really like Dwayne Dedmon at 4.0. I think he's just way too cheap. Alex Lynn definitely needs help, and Alex Lynn's only been playing like 19 to 20 minutes a game. Dedmon coming back in at 4K. You can put him at the center spot as well, so you can have some relief there. I don't exactly love doing that, but, you can build all around that. So, with that said, Dedmon at 4.0, I like it. Bazemore at 5.7. I definitely will have a little bit of Baze. That's kind of what I'm looking at for the Clippers and Atlanta game. With Collins coming back, that kind of puts a hurt on guys like Omari Spellman, who's actually had 3 double-doubles in his last 6 games, who's only 3.8K if you're into that. I don't hate it, but Collins, should be seeing 12 to 15 minutes now with his return, and that just doesn't bode well for him. That's why I like Dedmon more, because I think Dedmon's going to see more at the – Dedmon is probably going to push Omari, a few minutes off too, playing both the 4 and the 5. So that's why I like Dedmon, is because he can play both. I think he will play both, and I think that this bodes well for him at 4K. Moving along, San Antonio at New Orleans Pelicans. San Antonio played last night. Rudy Gay not Rudy. DeMar DeRozan and LMA both played almost 40 minutes last night. This does not set up well for them. Bertans is in the concussion protocol. They still are without Pau Gasol. They've got tons of guards, but their big guys are going to be hurting. And I just don't – this is not a good matchup for them. Obviously, playing against the Pelicans, playing against Randall, Nico, AD. So I'm likely going to be – I'm not totally fading this game. I think there's some value on the San Antonio side, but I think you can find better plays elsewhere as far as, paying up for the big guys. I do like Julius Randle at 6.8. And the fact that it does kind of get out of hand, I think he'll play quite a bit. So Randall at 6.8, I like that quite a bit. I really do like Rudy Gay at 5.3. He's been seeing 28 to 29 minutes a game. He has been, missing a game here and there, so it's kind of worth watching. But Rudy Gay at 5.3 is definitely worth looking at. I think Patty Mills is a tournament play at 3.9, 25 fantasy points in his last 2 games. 3.9, definitely worth a look per minute wise. A couple guys I think you can keep on your radar. Dante Cunningham at 3.4. Obviously, this is a little bit of a revenge narrative here, as he did play for the Pelicans before. So Dante Cunningham at 3.4 should definitely get some run. Another guy you can look at is Jacob Poeltl at 3.1K. Like I said, they're without Bertans. They're without Pau Gasol. LMA played 40 minutes last night. I could definitely see Poeltl kind of maybe carving out 15 to 18 minutes, hopefully. At 3.1K, I think that's very fair. So I would keep him on the back burner just in case. DeMar DeRozan at 9.1. He's going to get the Drew Holiday treatment. I know DDR is really good, but Drew Holiday has locked down some really, really good really good guards. Oladipo. There's a couple more, but anyway. Plus he played 40 minutes last night. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at in San Antonio and Pelicans. I'm going to move to probably my favorite stackable game, and everybody's probably going to stack this game, and for good reason. Denver at Milwaukee. Milwaukee at 5.5 point home favorite here with a 228 total on the board, highest total on the board so far. It's got a lot to like. A lot to like on the Denver side as well. Jokic at 9.5, obviously. Gary Harris came alive last game, put up 44 fantasy points. He's 6.1 tonight. He's obviously in a pretty good spot. One of the guys who I think is very, very cheap and way too cheap on both sides, both DK and FanDuel, is Juancho Hernan-Gomez at 4.8. I think he's 5.5 on FanDuel. He's definitely a nice plug-and-play. Monty Morris at 4.1, I think 28 minutes in his last 4 games or more. Ever since he got back from not starting, he started the one game and had just a terrible game, and then he came back and was off the bench the next game, and he had a pretty decent game again. So Monty Morris at 4.1, I think he's definitely worth the GPP dart. For Milwaukee, I like Bledsoe at 6.9. He's priced up in this game, and I think that's for good reason. I really do like Bledsoe, a smidge under 7K there. If you want to play Giannis, I'm fine with it. He's over 11K. That's totally up to you. I think other than that, I'm going to go kind of cheaper on the Milwaukee side. Pat Connaughton again at 4.0. He's played 21 or more minutes in his last 4 or 5 games. They still have a few injuries allowing him to see good minutes, so I definitely be looking at him at 4.0 in tournaments for sure. I think another guy that they will probably have to play a little bit more tonight is Ersan Ilyasova at 3.6. I think Ersan sees a few more minutes. John Henson is out for a while. Brook Lopez has been seeing 40 minutes or so. I'm not a big fan of Lopez, but I do think Ersan is a decent, tournament dart at 3.6. He can play both the 4 and the 5. So at 3.6, I definitely think you should be looking at some Ersan. They're going to need it against this big Denver team. So Ilyasova, most definitely be looking at him. Move right along to Dallas at Memphis. This game, also, it has a very low total, 204. Memphis is minus 3.5 home favorite here. One play that I absolutely do love is Jaren Jackson at 5.8. The guy's been absolutely killing it at home. His last 4 home games have been 46.5, 39.8, had a dud against Philadelphia and put up 11.8. But then his 4th game was 40.3. So basically 3 of those 4 have gone for at least 40 fantasy points or more. So at 5.8, I'm definitely looking at Jaren Jackson here at 5.8. That's easily a plug play right there. Gasol at 7.6. I think that one's fair enough. I like him quite a bit, but I think there's a lot of good plays at center tonight. I would be looking at JaMychal Green. They did play yesterday, so this is a back-to-back. JaMychal played 21 minutes, put up 25 fantasy points. I don't know if he'll play on a back-to-back. That's kind of why I'm saying you want to look at it. But at 4.1, if he does decide to play, if they do allow him to play, I don't know if he'll see the same amount of minutes, which is kind of scary. I think you can probably look some other places, but, he'll probably be 0 owned. So at 4.1, keep JaMychal Green on the back burner. Shelvin Mack at 4.2, over 27 minutes in his last 5 games. He's been seeing plenty of minutes, so Shelvin Mack, keep considering him as well at 4.2. Very fair price. One guy for Dallas that's fairly cheap, always and has been since his return, is Harrison Barnes at 5.5K. 36, 29, 39 fantasy points in his last 3. So, very, very fair fantasy point totals here for his price at 5.5K. He's priced down because it's at Memphis, but I don't hate it. He's been playing plenty of minutes, and he'll continue to play plenty of minutes. So Barnes at 5.5, sure. I think you can look at Barea at 4.4. Wes Matthews is out once again. Barea did not see the most minutes in their last game, but I think he will see a pretty decent amount of minutes tonight. So Bray at 4.4, most definitely be looking at, especially for tournaments. I don't have a problem with DSJ at 5K. He just played 28 minutes in his last game, and I don't know if that's because of Wes Matthews or what, but he seemed to have gotten the more run of the guard play there. 28 minutes is the most that he's seen in his last 5 games. I think the highest before that was like 24 or 25. So I don't know if he's getting extra minutes. I don't know, but at 5K, he's definitely worth throwing a dart at. So that's kind of what I'm looking at in Dallas and Memphis. That's going to move us to another very stackable game, and one that I also really like. There's a few games that I really like on this slate: Denver, Milwaukee, the Clippers in Atlanta, and OKC in Sacramento. Obviously, I think probably my favorite guard play on this whole board is De'Aaron Fox at 6.1. How you cannot play De'Aaron Fox at 6.1 tonight in this paced-up matchup, I don't know. He's just too cheap, guys. He's my roster monster. Get him in there. Play De'Aaron Fox. I also like Buddy Hield at 5.6. The guy's just way too cheap. Buddy Hield's been tearing it up at home. He could easily go for 40 or more fantasy points at 5.6. He's definitely worth playing. Marvin Bagley at 3.9. Saw 27 minutes. Last game, put up 29 fantasy points versus the Rockets. Just here their last game. Again, they're going to be in a spot where they're going to be playing against some bigger opponents here with Jeremy Grant, Steven Adams, Patrick Patterson even. So Marvin Bagley at 3.9, I think is definitely worth a look. Shumpert, if you remember and recall, put up 46.8 fantasy points in their last game versus OKC. It's a revenge game, so I don't know if it was a revenge game or not. Now that I think about it, I don't think Shump played for OKC, or did he? I know he played for Cleveland. Maybe he didn't, but either way, for some reason, I guess he likes playing against OKC. He put up almost 47 fantasy points in their last game. He is 3.5K if you're into that sort of thing. Troy Williams at 3.2 has played 15 and 19 minutes in his last 2 and put up 20.5 fantasy points in the 19-minute game. He's been getting a little run at the other guard spot, so if you're into that sort of thing, want to play him in a tournament, I don't hate it. Obviously, Bogdanovic is 4K tonight. He's played 20 – hang on, where's my note? He's played 25, 24, and 20 minutes in his last 3 since returning from injury. He should play tonight. They've been kind of giving him a night off every once in a while. He should play it, and at 4K, I don't hate it. So I would definitely be looking at him. For OKC, obviously, you're going to look at Schroeder at 8.1. You're going to look at Adams at 7.5. You're going to look at Jeremy Grant at 4.9. It looks like Ferguson and Abrams both may sit, so that might open up some room for TLC. Cabaret there at 3.2. He played 25 minutes last game, so I would definitely be looking into him. Especially in tournaments. He's going to go really low owned. We know he can do a little bit here. He's not going to flash you with a 40-point fantasy game, but at 3.2K, if he gets 25 minutes, it's definitely worth a plug and play. So that's kind of where I'm at on tonight's slate. It's 22 minutes, so I'm going to run through kind of my buy lows for both DK and FanDuel. I did say buy lows, so I'm kind of sitting around the 6K and below mark. Excuse me. So for buy lows on DK, I think at the point guard spot, obviously De'Aaron Fox. I'm going to have De'Aaron Fox everywhere, probably. I like Jeremy Lin at 4.2. I also like Colin Sexton at 5.1. I think he's too cheap on DK. At the shooting guard spot, once again, Buddy Hield, JJ Redick, Barea, Shumpert. At the small forward spot, I think you got to look at Gallinari, Juancho Hernan-Gomez, Bogdanovic. At power forward, Jaren Jackson Jr. is too cheap. Harrison Barnes is too cheap. Dwayne Dedmon at 4K. Ersan at 3.6. And for your center spot, obviously Dedmon once again at 4K. And then Baines at 3.3, I think is a decent buy low. For FanDuel, Sexton at 6K, Shelvin Mack at 5.1, Jeremy Lin at 4.8, Barea at 4.1. I think all those guys have nice appeal. At the shooting guard spot, David Nwaba at 4.0, I think is a nice plug. Shumpert at 3.8 again. Small forward, I think Juancho is way too cheap at 5.5 here. He's even cheaper on DK at 4.8. Either way, Juancho will definitely be playing him. Stanley Johnson at 4.3, I think, is a plug in FanDuel if you want to go there. For power forward, Jeremy Grant at 5.4, Ersan at 4K, Dante Cunningham at 3.7. Obviously, we talked about the revenge, over 25 minutes in his last 3 or 4 games, so don't hate Dante Cunningham. And at the center spot, Dwayne Dedmon at 4.7 and Jacob Poeltl at 3.7. So, Again, my roster monster is De'Aaron Fox tonight. He will probably be who I have 85 to 90% of, probably. This is just a great spot for him in a pace-up matchup, and he's just too cheap, guys. So, with that said, it is 25 minutes. This pod has been probably one of my longer ones. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Enjoy your Monday.